What's up, guys? Welcome to the show. Happy June 24th. It's hot out there. It's going to be up to 100 degrees today. We're here to talk Broncos. I know the Broncos are not practicing right now. They get 5 weeks off, guys. 5 weeks off to get away. Stay in shape, though, but get away a little bit. Recharge your batteries before training camp starts. It starts at the end of July. These guys are going to come back ready to go. So they're getting away from the game, but we're not. We're not getting away from the game. We're staying here talking Broncos, okay? At least 2 times a week, maybe more as this thing goes on. But we're doing Monday. We're doing Friday. Guerilla Football, Denver. We're talking Broncos today, and we're going to get into 2 topics in particular. One of those topics I know is near and dear to your heart. Bo Nix, should he start? Jarrett Stidham, should that guy start week 1? I'm talking week 1. Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, or should it be Zack Wilson week 1? I'm going to make an argument for each of those guys to start week 1, and you can tell me who you think should be the starter week 1 in Seattle, okay? But before we do that, guys, we're going to take a little trip around the AFC West. Now, the Broncos are in the AFC West. You see that A there with the 4 stars? Those 4 stars represent 4 teams. Your Denver Broncos. Also, the Las Vegas Raiders. I almost said Oakland. They're not in Oakland anymore. They're in Vegas. The LA Chargers. Almost said San Diego. They're not in San Diego. They're in LA now. And, of course, the World Championship team, the Kansas City Chiefs. The standard bearer of excellence in the NFL. Won 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls. The road to the Super Bowl goes through Kansas City, unfortunately, and Arrowhead Stadium, which they've inexplicably renamed Geehaw Stadium. That's right, Geehaw. Check it out. G-E-H-A, all capital letters. I think it means Government Employees Health Association or something stupid like that. There's not a lot of things we can make fun of the Chiefs about. Geehaw is one of them. Geehaw is stupid. One of the stupidest things I've ever heard. But money talks, of course. They throw that name up on the stadium, and there you go. Last year, obviously, we know the Chiefs won the division. They ended up 11-6. The Broncos were 8-9, tied with the Raiders, but the Raiders got that tiebreaker. Raiders were 8-9, but they beat the Broncos twice. Beat the Broncos twice. The Broncos haven't beaten the Raiders in a long freaking time, and that's pathetic, guys. That's pathetic because the Broncos always had the Raiders' number. I played for the Broncos for 6 years, 2003 to 2006. I think we, obviously played them 12 times during those 6 years, probably beat them 8 or 9 of the times. We always beat the fucking Raiders. That was the point. You always beat the Raiders. It was like, it used to be a rivalry. I know there's some folks now who say there is no rivalry anymore in the NFL. Yes, there are, and there is, and it should be. The Broncos are the Raiders' rival, and the Raiders have been playing like it, and the Broncos have not, okay? The Raiders have been smoking the Denver Broncos, but they both finished 8-9 last year, and the LA Chargers were at the bottom of the division at 5-12. The Chiefs, so the Broncos' records against these different teams last year, the Broncos went 1-1 against the Kansas City Chiefs. In fact, I think the Kansas City Chiefs had like a 15-game winning streak against the Broncos. That ended last year under Sean Payton's watch. He was asked in advance in one of those games, how are you going to get over this hump? The Kansas City Chiefs hump. And Sean Payton was like, it's not my hump. It's not our hump. Relative to other humps, not my hump. Not his hump. Either way, he got over the hump, beat the Chiefs, 1-1 against the Chiefs last year. The Broncos were 0-2 against the Raiders, like I just mentioned, and they were 2-0 against the Chargers, okay? The Chargers are the worst team in this division, but according to PFF, guys, which stands for Pro Football Fools, is that? No. Pro Football Fuckers? No. It's Pro Football Focus. I like to call them because they usually don't know what they're talking about, though they spend a lot of time crunching numbers and grading players and teams, and they have graded out the Broncos as the 32nd best roster in the NFL. And if you know anything about math, that's not very good, okay? That's the last place in the NFL because there's 32 teams, folks. But the rest of the AFC, aside from the Chiefs, who are the number 2 roster, according to PFF in the NFL, and the Niners are the number 1 roster, according to the PFF in the NFL, how do you think they came up with those numbers, kids? Those are the 2 teams that played in the Super Bowl, okay? So now you see where PFF is at. They just take like the teams with the best records and call it the best roster. Clearly, performance leads to an interpretation that you're a good roster. And when you look at the Broncos at number 32, that is because, in my opinion, there are a lot of unproven players, guys. These are young players who have not had a winning season in the NFL. And, of course, you call them shitty players when they haven't won yet. But I don't think they're shitty. I just think they haven't come together yet as a team. Part of that is coaching. They got the coach in place now. We'll get into that in a little bit. But the Raiders, according to PFF, are the number 23 team roster-wise in the NFL, and the Chargers are the number 26 roster in the NFL. Interestingly enough, PFF had the Chargers at number 9 in 2023. Of course, their poor performance means that now they suck. So you know where PFF is headed in these directions. But it is curious that the Broncos at 8-9 last year, not the worst team in the NFL, are considered the worst roster. They lost Russell Wilson. They lost Jerry Jeudy. They lost Cortland Sutton. They lost Lloyd Cushenberry. But, hey, they gained some guys. And obviously the quarterback situation being a question mark contributes to this. And the defense gave up a lot of points last year, but I would argue that the defense was the strength of the Broncos last year. I know some folks don't think that, but I thought they kept the Broncos in a lot of games, and the offense wasn't able to put up points, particularly in the first half. So let's look a little bit at the offseason moves of some of these teams. The Kansas City Chiefs, who keep getting better and better and better, got their backup quarterback. Okay, they got their starter. Now they got their backup. They signed Carson Wentz. You know that guy, Carson Wentz. He didn't win. He won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, but he wasn't on the field. That was Nick Foles. You remember Carson Wentz had that whole season, got hurt at the end. Nick Foles took over and got the Super Bowl victory for him. But Carson Wentz has a lot of experience, and he's a pretty good backup if you think about it. So, if from the Chiefs' perspective, hopefully they don't have to go through that at all. But if they do, Carson Wentz is a capable backup. And they also signed Hollywood Brown to shore up their wide receiver crew. Hollywood Brown, a talented, small, kind of jitterbug type of receiver that had some success in Arizona a little bit, some injuries. He was also in Baltimore, had some success there, but he's trying to find a home, and this could be the home for him. Now, they got Rashee Rice, and they got the Xavier guy, the rookie, to help Patrick Mahomes out. But these guys keep getting stronger every year. They signed defensive end Mike Dana, re-signed him. They got re-signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which I thought was hilarious. They also re-signed one of the best defensive players in the league, defensive tackle Chris Jones. They got tight end Irv Smith, and linebacker, they re-signed linebacker Drew Tranquill. And when he hits you, it's kind of like NyQuil, but it's like Tranquil. You go out like a light, okay? And all right, so let's move on to the Raiders. And of course, they drafted some guys. We'll get into those draft classes at another date. But we're talking about the offseason acquisitions here for these teams in the AFC West. Did they get stronger? Did they get weaker? The Raiders signed defensive tackle Christian Wilkins. I think he played for the Miami Dolphins prior to that. And, let's look at those guys there for the Raiders in a second. But Christian Wilkins, 4 years, $110 million. $110 million, $84.75 million guaranteed. A very big body, capable defensive tackle in the middle there that they hope is going to shore it up. And as you see, that guy right there with a mustache, Gardner Minshew, was signed presumably to be the backup, I guess, with the Raiders. The starter, Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell was a rookie last year, I believe a second-round pick. And Aiden O'Connell played all right. And it seems, though, like they trust him. They trust Aiden O'Connell, at least going forward, to be the guy. We'll see how that pans out. Running back Alexander Madison, they signed him. Defensive tackle Adam Butler and some offensive linemen and a few other dudes that you had never heard of. But the Raiders continue to be a thorn in the side of the Broncos. And that's sad because it's not supposed to be that way, guys. All right, the Chargers. The Chargers had some pretty interesting offseason signings. Linebacker Denzel Perryman for a year. This guy is a missile. When he hits you, it's even more than tranquil. It's like you're dead. This guy comes like a missile and hits you really hard. He comes like a missile. I don't know how he comes. I'm sorry. He hits really hard, this guy, and he's going to be going downhill trying to put a hurt on whoever's back in the backfield for the Broncos. Tight end Hayden Hurst, a pretty capable tight end they signed. Running back Gus Edwards, who's been with the Baltimore Ravens for a while. Center Bradley Bozeman. Defensive tackle Puna Ford. You ever heard of Puna? Me neither. And then safety Alohi Gilman. You ever heard of Alohi? I just got back from Hawaii, so Aloha. I've never heard of Alohi. Tight end Will Dissly, a 3-year deal. He's a capable tight end as well to kind of take the, So every quarterback needs a safety blanket type of tight end guy, and I think Will Dissly, his experience from Seattle, his commitment to the run game will be good for the Chargers. And, of course, they re-signed quarterback Easton Stick, who played against the Broncos last year after Justin Herbert got hurt. And Justin Herbert had to watch on the sideline as Easton Stick sucked it up for 4 quarters and got Jarrett Stidham his first ever victory in a Bronco. Actually, his first ever victory as a starting quarterback. We're going to get into this in a little bit, but Jarrett Stidham has played in 4 games as a starter in the NFL. He's only won 1, and that was against our boy Easton Stick there in L.A. All right, so let's look at the coaching in the AFC West. We already know who we've got. We got freaking Sean Payton, all right? The highest paid coach in the NFL. But is he the best? Is he the best coach in the NFL? I'd say no. That award goes to our boy up the road in Kansas City, Andy Reid. Andy Reid, Super Bowl champion, 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowl trophies he's hoisted with his walrus mustache and his love of cheeseburgers. And just being a dude, man. You think about playing for the Chiefs and you think about playing for that guy. How cool would that be if Andy Reid was your coach? It seems like he cares about his players like his own family, and they play like they believe that. And that matters. That really does matter, to think that your coach cares about you. And I'm going to talk about that in regards to another team and another coach in a second. But Andy Reid, lifetime, 258 and 144. He's played a lot of games, guys. Over 400 football games. He is 26-16 in the playoffs. You remember he had some success in Philly. They fired him after 1 bad year. He ended up in Kansas City, where he has built a dynasty. It's a dynasty now, guys. It's a dynasty. What are you going to say about it? It sucks to have to hear that as a Broncos fan, but it is a dynasty. And we talk a lot about Patrick Mahomes being like the figurehead of the dynasty, but not enough attention is given to this guy right here, Andy Reid, or credit. Before Patrick Mahomes ever got there, this guy had built Kansas City into a winner after they sucked for multiple years. You remember Romeo Crennel and Todd Haley. It was a debacle, okay? Andy Reid comes in, steadies the ship with Alex Smith for like 5 years. They won 10 games a year with Alex Smith, and then they were ready to plug in that piece at quarterback that could send them to the next level, but they'd already built the roster. It was operating at a high level. So Patrick Mahomes, all he had to come in and do was his own job. Sometimes when you put too much on a quarterback, say you got to do it all yourself, things don't go well. Case in point, Russell Wilson last year. Case in point, Zack Wilson at his tenure with the Jets. We don't want to do that to Bo Nix or whoever we put under center. We want everyone else to be doing their job at a high level. It makes the quarterback's job a lot easier. All right, in addition to Andy Reid in this division, we got Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce, the new head coach of the Raiders, the interim coach with the Raiders last year after Josh McDaniels was fired. Now, the Raiders have been down this road recently with this guy over here. Can you tell me who that guy is? Do you know? Do you know who it is? It's Rich Bisaccia. Many of you might not know who Rich Bisaccia is, but Rich Bisaccia took over for John Gruden when he got fired amidst the email scandal that he got embroiled in for talking a bunch of shit about a lot of people over a long period of time, and got outed with an NFL investigation into Dan Snyder, the owner of the Redskins, or I'm sorry, the Commanders' bad behavior. Well, John Gruden got caught up in that. His emails became public. Everyone figured out he's an asshole in a lot of different ways. He got fired, right? So the point is that Rich Bisaccia took over this embattled team, who was also dealing with Henry Ruggs getting thrown in jail for killing someone in his car. Another player who brandished a gun on Instagram Live. Don't do that. Don't brandish a firearm on social media. That's a bad idea, especially when you play pro sports and people are watching you. That guy got cut mid-season. Darren Waller and some other guy was dealing with addiction issues and had to take. They went through a lot. You remember Derek Carr standing up there crying, bringing the team together, and that dude right there, Rich Bisaccia, galvanized this team in an emotional season and got him to the playoffs, man. He ended up like 6-3 or 5-4 or something as a starter or as the head coach. And how did Mark Davis reward that? He fired him. He let him go, he let him walk, and he signed Josh McDaniels instead. And of course, McDaniels did what he always does. He burned the organization to the freaking ground, all right? He makes football miserable for the best football players in the world. He knows his X's and O's. He doesn't know people. That guy, Rich Bisaccia, does, and so does Antonio Pierce. I think the Raiders got it right signing this guy. They clearly like playing for him. The question is, will he make the in-game decisions that will allow them to win? And that is presumably why we have Sean Payton here, right? He's going to be the difference in those close games and make those difficult calls and work the clock and know what decisions to make in the moment of truth to get wins against inexperienced coaches like Antonio Pierce. All right, rounding out the AFC West coaching-wise, our boy Jim Harbaugh. Who's got it better than us? Remember that was his old quote when he was with the Niners. And in 4 years with the Niners, he had a lot of success. Jim Harbaugh did. He went 44-19. That's pretty darn good. 5-3 in the playoffs. They got to the Super Bowl. They lost in the Super Bowl. And after 4 years, Jim Harbaugh was gone. All right, he was out. And he went to college, and we know the success he's had in college. And now he's back in the pros to finally realize his childhood dream of winning a Super Bowl as a head coach and getting to stand next to his brother, or at least sit next to his brother at dinner around Thanksgiving and feel adequate, feel like he belongs at that table. I have my suspicions as to whether or not the Jim Harbaugh experiment is going to work in L.A. You know, he rubbed a lot of people wrong in San Francisco. That's why he had to leave after 4 years. Why would you leave? After 4 years as an NFL coach and you make it to the Super Bowl, then you just leave? Why? It must be because everyone fucking hates you. And you feel that. And so you got to get out. And the word is about Jim Harbaugh that he's just got to get out because everyone eventually hates him. Well, this is 10 years later now. And so has the world grown, or the world of pro football, grown a larger tolerance for a guy like him or a smaller one? And I just think that it's going to take him some time to figure it out there, and maybe, fingers crossed, they never will. So Sean Payton may be the highest paid coach in the NFL, but right now, Andy Reid is the best, and that is undoubtable. All right, that's your trip around the AFC West. I hope you enjoyed it. Yes. Now, let's move on to the quarterbacks for the Denver Broncos. All right? A lot is being made about this quarterback competition and the PFF grades, in which the Broncos were graded number 32 overall, have a lot to do with this room because, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot, quarterbacks in the NFL are overvalued. Yes, that's right. People think that they matter more than they actually do. Case in point, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and the well-oiled machine that existed before Patrick got there. Do your job. Of course, it's very important. The quarterback is incredibly important, but it's not the only reason why a team is successful or fails. And in addition to that, a quarterback's performance can be based on how shitty the rest of the team is. And if the rest of the team is not supporting that quarterback's performance, then the result is bad quarterback play. And you say, this guy sucks. Well, maybe there's other elements involved in the game and on the team that are contributing to his suckiness, right? So when it comes to these quarterbacks for the Broncos, you got Bo Nix, drafted number 12. All right, throw up a picture of that handsome devil there, Bo Nix. You got one, Jesse? Yeah, he's working on it. He's also eating a burrito. All right, Jesse got lunch delivered, so we can't be too mad at him. Didn't get me a burrito, which is cool, man. Did bring it in here so I could smell it and then be like, where's my burrito? Just kidding. But anyway, Bo Nix is a handsome fella, and you can see him right there focused on his target down the field. We got Zack Wilson, and we got Jarrett Stidham, okay? Who will be the starter, not only in the season, but week one? This is a topic of conversation I think is very interesting, and you can approach it from a lot of different angles. Now, really quick, though, before I get into an argument for each, Zack Wilson has 33 starts, okay, in the NFL. 33, that's a lot. That is a lot of playing time in the NFL. And there's only one way to learn about playing quarterback in the NFL, and that's to have those starts, to make those mistakes, to go through those tough times. Zack Wilson has been through them in New York. He was drafted number 2 overall. He was thrown into the fire on a team, in my opinion, that didn't have an identity offensively, that was a defensive-minded team, that didn't have a lot of support for him. His offense coordinators changed each year. His offense coordinator that he trusted the most, Greg Knapp, tragically died in a biking accident right before the season started or in the offseason. And so he's been through a lot, this kid. And now he's here to rehab his football experience and his technique and become a better quarterback, okay? Coincidentally, the Jets have the number 4 roster in the NFL according to PFF, which is interesting. So they're basically saying that Zack Wilson sucked so bad last year that he could not win with a roster that was that good. But I would argue that maybe the reason why he sucked also was because Nathaniel Hackett was his offensive coordinator. You remember Camp Hackett, the summer camp? He was like Ernest P. Worrell out here from summer camp. He donned a red nose. He juggled at practice. Camp Hackett was not good for our offense or our team, and I doubt it was very good for the Jets offense. So you got to take Zack Wilson's performance last year with a grain of salt. All right, moving on to Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham's got 4 starts. 4 starts, that's it, as an NFL starting quarterback. And he's 1-3 in those 2 starts. He has 2 starts as a Raider with Josh McDaniels. And you got to think that he wanted to get away from, because he was with Josh McDaniels in New England. Okay, he learned from him there. And like I said, Josh is very good at X's and O's, but he has a horrible reputation for the people part, being a human being part, that part, which is kind of important in life and in sports. And so Jarrett Stidham was in New England with Joshy Boy, in Vegas with Joshy Boy, and fled the stench of Josh McDaniels smartly and ended up here under the tutelage of Sean Payton, where, you know, Sean Payton liked him. He brought him here for a reason. He clearly likes Jarrett Stidham, and he likes him enough to have benched Russell Wilson last year at the end of the year and put in Stiddy for the last 2 games, during which Stiddy went 1-1. Now, one of those the only victory was against Easton Stick and the Chargers, and he looked okay, but then he got smoked by the Raiders in the last game of the year and didn't look that awesome. However, he is the incumbent starter. He's beloved in the locker room, guys. They really like him over there. He wears a hoodie every day at practice. I don't know if he's pictured with a hoodie there. No, he's not. I don't know if you can wear it game day. But Stiddy wears a hoodie at practice outside of his pads, which is incredible. So he also knows the playbook. Okay, Sean Payton really loves him, like I said. And he did bench Russell Wilson in favor of Stiddy. So the knowing the playbook, knowing the system thing is big, especially when you're trying to teach the system to younger guys. When I got to the NFL, or when I got here to the Broncos as a young receiver, right, I watched Rod Smith. You know, I'm in the meeting room, of course, learning the playbook, but the application of the plays, the little stuff, the instinct, the idiosyncrasies of each route and each concept, you don't really learn that in meetings from the coach. You learn that from doing it on the field and then watching the dudes who know how to do it and taking mental note of the things that can happen on a field that lead him to make different decisions and react in different ways. Because you can teach all you want in the classroom, but then you go out on the field and things happen that you're not prepared for. I mean, it's kind of crazy. You can try to script practice, which they do. The offense and the defense are scripted every practice, right? And so it's kind of hard to evaluate quarterbacks at practice, especially if you don't run any kind of situational move the ball periods, and they haven't been doing that. So a lot of the folks who've been going to minicamp, myself included, watching these quarterbacks and saying, like, who won the day and who's looking better, they all look the fucking same right now, guys. They all look the same, except Stiddy has a little bit better grasp on the offense, and so he makes a little bit better decisions right now with the ball, and they're a little quicker. Bo Nix, we'll get to him in a second. No, I'm going to get to him right now. Look at that handsome devil. Look at him. Bo Nix, 61 starts in college, 43-18 as a starter. The number 12 pick in the draft. The future of the Denver Broncos? That remains to be seen. 77.4% completion last year at Oregon, 45 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, over 4,500 yards. That's a fucking monster. That's a monster season, okay? Those numbers are huge. That came in his 5th season as an NCAA quarterback. He started at Auburn. He transferred to Oregon and blossomed into that type of efficient quarterback that Sean Payton prefers. Now, Russell Wilson is gone. Russell Wilson played a brand of football that Sean Payton didn't appreciate. Didn't mean it's not effective. Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl. He went to another one, okay? Like 9 Pro Bowls in 10 years. He's done a lot of great things in this league, but for Sean Payton, he didn't like working with him, clearly. On the field and off the field, it wasn't for Sean. And so much so that they're willing to eat $83 million, okay? $83 million not to have him around anymore. And this guy is his replacement. He's smart. He's technical. He's the son of a coach, which coaches like, because you understand coach speak relative to the terminology dictated to you in meetings relative to the playbook. All right, he's got an adequate arm. I've heard the knock against Bo Nix is that his arm's not strong enough. But he's got a good arm. I think he's got a fine arm. And I think he's an organic leader. He seems to be one of the guys. And like Brandon Cristal shared last week, he was out at a concert, Zach Bryan concert, with Alex Singleton, linebacker, defense. That doesn't happen all the time. An offensive player hanging out with a defensive player that early, especially a rookie guy hanging out with a veteran and becoming friends with him that fast. That actually means something, guys. It's not just, oh, yeah, they're teammates, they went to Zach Bryan. No, they're growing a connection, a friendship, a brotherhood, which is what you absolutely need to do something special in the NFL. Sure, you can be good and win, 8, 9 games, maybe sneak into the playoffs. But if you want to be special year after year after year, you got to care about each other. You got to put it on the line for one another. And you do that by becoming friends and hanging out off the field. So I like that story. It made me feel good about Bo Nix. So those are your 3 options going into this season. Which one of these orphan dogs, as Sean Payton called them, should start week 1 against Seattle? All right. There's plenty of arguments to be made for any of these guys, and I'm going to make one for each. You can tell me what you think, all right? First off, Zack Wilson. I think Zack Wilson should start week 1, and here's why. Let's see what he's got. He's the number 2 draft pick in the NFL, clearly has a lot of arm talent, physical talent, fast, athletic. He wouldn't be a number 2 draft pick for nothing, right? And the Broncos are already in cap hell because of Russell Wilson. They're already behind the 8 ball. No, they have no expectations on him this year, right? Stiddy, and you got Bo Nix for the foreseeable future. Why not give Zack Wilson a ride? Send him out there and see what he can do. See if the New York Jets abomination was an anomaly. See if Sean Payton can clean up his act. See if those 33 starts meant something for him, if they did something to him, if they made him a better player, and all he needed was a fresh start. You're never going to know that unless you put him in. What do we got to lose, right? Like I said, the expectations are very low on this year's Broncos. Now, they themselves will say something different. They expect to make moves. They expect to make waves. They expect to make the playoffs. Shit, they expect to win the Super Bowl. Shh, I know we're not supposed to say that, but the Broncos, they want that. They believe that. Why are you doing it if you don't believe that, right? So any team who can make the playoffs, if you go on a run, you can win the Super Bowl. That's what they're thinking. That's what they're talking about. We're going to prove everybody wrong. But realistically, because of the cap hell they're in, they're $50-something million getting eaten from the Russell Wilson debacle. The expectations aren't super high. So you're going to have the opportunity to try out some guys and get experience for guys that otherwise you may not have. How about we throw Zack Wilson in there and see what he can do? Huh? What do you think? All right, there's my argument for Zach. Here's my argument for Jarrett Stidham. He is your incumbent starter. Jarrett Stidham knows the playbook, like we talked about. And that matters when you're trying to get off to a good start in a season. Sure, I said the expectations are low, but not for this team. They're trying to win. They're trying to win now. Sean Payton talked recently about how he's going to be judged by the world when all this is over, and it's about wins and losses. That's all that matters. Wins, losses, hardware, trophies, playoff wins. That's what matters. They go back. I just read their lifetime, win-loss record. I didn't talk about each win in context for each season and how and why. No, nobody cares about that. When it's all is said and done, they look at your record. Sean Payton knows that. He needs to win as many games as he possibly can. Does Jarrett Stidham give him a better opportunity to win in week 1 against Seattle on the road, right? Do you really want to throw either Zack Wilson in there, who has had a propensity to make the critical error at the wrong time, or Bo Nix, who's a rookie, into this hostile environment in week 1? Now, I will say hostile environment crowd-wise, this is a first-year head coach in Seattle as well, okay? They're going to face a lot of inexperienced coaches this year, which should give the Broncos a leg up. Will that factor in to the way Sean Payton views this? But Jarrett Stidham is a guy who the locker room loves. He's a guy they see every day. And yes, he wears a fucking hoodie, guys. He wears a hoodie under his pads, okay? That's not for nothing. Jarrett Stidham knows the system the best. Would he give this offense the best chance to win? And if you really think that Bo Nix is the future, let Bo Nix sit and watch Jarrett Stidham for a couple weeks, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Get a feel for it, and then go in when the team is moving a little bit better. Would it be problematic for Bo Nix to throw him into the fire right away and have him take his lumps? And would that, if he did take his lumps and he did fail, would that put him down permanently? Would he never recover, a la Zack Wilson? Right now, there's a huge question mark around Zack Wilson. No such question marks around Bo Nix, at least as far as his performance in the NFL, because he hasn't done anything yet. Zack Wilson has shown poor quarterback play, okay? And so it would be a huge risk to start Zack Wilson going forward. Bo Nix, should he rest and wait behind Jarrett Stidham and let Jarrett take the reins to start the season? Or, here's one for Bo Nix, all right? Guys, Bo, he's the future. Bo Nix is the future of the Denver Broncos. You drafted him, number 12 overall. Why wait? Why wait? Expectations are low. Guys, the expectations are already low. Peyton Manning talked recently about starting his first year, all 16 games. He went 3-13. He almost threw 30 interceptions, and he credits that season to teaching him how to turn it around. The next season, I think he was 13-3, and off he goes on a Hall of Fame career. But there are other cases where that was not the case. Aaron Rodgers sat, Pat Mahomes sat, bunch of dudes sat, and then, Lamar Jackson sat, and then ended up taking the reins and becoming the quarterbacks they are today. Either way you look at it, okay, someone's going to start against Seattle. And Sean Payton talked about who that guy was going to be. He said he's going to trust his gut. He's going to trust his gut based on who's playing well and who gives them the best chance to win. Who will that guy be? When it comes to Bo Nix, I think they should go with Bo. I do. Because I think they should let him build the chemistry with the young players on this roster that's going to be critical going forward, guys. 2024, low expectations. Really, what I think is 2026 is your year where the Broncos really are going to really turn into the machine we want to see from them. And then for the next, of course, I hope, 6, 7, 8 years, we have playoff runs every year, 3 Super Bowls, boom, Sean Payton walks off into the sunset, and we're good. But that's going to require some lumps. That's going to require some. Conga, Hydra, says, Nate, do you think the Broncos will win a playoff game prior to 2030? Well, I love your optimism there, Conga. That's 6 years away. I do. I think the Broncos will win a playoff game. Maybe not this year. I think they could win a playoff game next year. And I think in 2026, if Sean Payton is as good of a coach as we all hope he is, and that he says he is, and that the money paid by Greg Penner indicates that he is, then the Broncos are going to be in the mix, guys. In 3 years, they'll be in the mix. That's why I say start Bo Nix week 1. As long as you have faith that the offensive line is going to hold up, which I do, this is the strongest position group on the field. The offensive line, across the board, there really are no weaknesses on this O-line. This is a dominant O-line, my opinion. So whoever you put back there is going to be as safe as a quarterback can be in the NFL. And if you feel good about Bo Nix, what he's been doing at practice and with the playbook and his leadership, stick him out there, let him get his lumps, put Jarrett Stidham as the backup and Zack Wilson on the practice squad. All right, that's it for us on Guerilla Football Denver. We're going to be back Friday, and we'll keep this thing rolling, guys. I'm Nate Jackson, Guerilla Sports. See you next time. These are my notes.